Hello everyone, it's nice to be with you today. My name is Dev Jani from the University of Dar es Salaam Business School in Tanzania. Tanzania is an East African country, and currently I am doing a joint collaboration research with Hanyang University, particularly the Euro-Asian Institute. So I'm happy to be with you to present tourism in Tanzania and a bit to compare with tourism in Korea, and then to indicate how we can make tourism in these two countries sustainable. So the title for this particular presentation is Tourism and Social Entrepreneurship. One might ask, why social entrepreneurship? It's important that we relate tourism development with social entrepreneurship, because through social entrepreneurship we can make the tourism in any country in the world to be more sustainable, to be in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. So I will briefly introduce what is tourism and the consequences of tourism, and then to give you a glimpse of what tourism resources we have in Tanzania and compared to South Korea. So many people know, including you, my audience, you know what is tourism. In simple language, you can say tourism is the phenomena where people travel from one country to another for different reasons. It might be for education, for leisure, for business, and so forth. But in the process of this movement from one country to another, there are several advantages and disadvantages. For instance, one of the advantages is that tourism generally brings economic benefit to the country where people travel to. But at the same time, there might be negative consequences if those investments in that particular country, they are not owned by the locals, meaning that most of the profit will just go back to the country where the investors are coming from. So in this sense, we can see there is an advantage and disadvantage with respect to economics. Not only that, we can have advantage on the social aspect, because when people travel from one country to another, they have an opportunity to know the culture of the other country, to know the lifestyle and social aspects, which might lead into more peaceful world, of which we really need in this particular era. So that might reflect the social benefit. But nevertheless, we can have a negative social consequence, like when visitors visit a country, they might introduce new culture which might not be appropriate in that particular country. So in this social aspect, we see there is a positive as well as a negative consequence. So in order to make the world more sustainable, we need to know how we should minimize the negative consequences, but at the same time to maximize the positive consequences. And that's the point where social entrepreneurship comes in. Social entrepreneurs, these are the individuals who try to develop business that not only maximize the positive consequences, but reducing also the negative consequences. Now, you might ask me, because I'm coming from Tanzania, why people come to Tanzania, or why people go to Tanzania? Well, as I did mention earlier, there might be several reasons why people travel, including business, leisure, and other things. But I will try to focus on leisure. Why? Because Tanzania has much to offer to the world. Tanzania, we have so many resources, including the famous Mount Kilimanjaro, which is at the highest point in Africa. Not only having the highest point in Africa, but we have the lowest point in Africa in Lake Tanganyika, which is on the western side of Tanzania. It's the deepest lake. So you can find the highest point and the lowest point in Africa in the same country. Don't you agree with me? It's a beautiful country. Not only that, more than 30% of Tanzania is dedicated to natural reserve and game areas where you can see natural beauty, not only vegetation, but also wildlife. When you mention the big five, like the elephants, lion, rhino, they are found in Tanzania abundantly. In Tanzania presently, we have 22 national parks, which are purely designated for tourism, where both locals and international visitors, they can go and admire wildlife. So when you mention the wildlife Mecca, there is no place like Tanzania. But nevertheless, we need to make sure that those wildlife, they are maintained, they are developed in a sustainable manner. And that's why it's important to link to social entrepreneurship. So Africa in general, many people outside Africa, they think Africa is just one big country. But in Africa, there are more than 40 countries. But we have more or less unique or the same resources. So when you mention Africa to Westerners, Asian countries, they think Africa is a place for wildlife. So generally, African tourism resources, as you can see in the slide, with animals like elephants, giraffe, which is a symbol of Tanzania as a country. We have water resources, mentioning lakes, ocean, mountain, grassland, like the savanna grassland, which is mesmerizing. It calms not only your spirit and mind, but also your emotion. Not only that, the culture. If you walk along any African village market, you'll be mesmerized by the colors of the dress the people usually dress. Because in rural Africa, people like to wear colorful dress, orange, pink. Like if we mention one tribe in Tanzania, the Maasai, they prefer to wear dress or just like a piece of cloth which is red, blue or purple, which really attracts foreigners to admire not only the dress but also the culture, to know what are their values, philosophies and the like. So simply you can say Africa is blessed with three resources, and these are nature, and even more nature. Now let me focus more on Tanzania, where I'm coming from, of which I'm more comfortable talking about, and I'll mix cultural and natural resources. So as the slide shows, this is a map of Tanzania, and you can see we have huge natural resources in terms of wildlife. You can see there is an insertion of lion in the map, giraffe, wildebeest, antelopes, and the like. Not only that, look at the people, the culture. If you focus on the southern part of Tanzania, where we have Lindi, Mtwara, and Ruvuma regions, there are people with unique culture, with their own dances. And usually they prefer to wear black clothes when they perform these traditional dances. When you move along the coast, eastern side of Tanzania, we have the famous Swahili culture, which is a mix of Arabic culture, Bantu culture, and a bit of Indian culture, where people, especially women, they prefer to wear scarf, long dress, and men, they prefer to wear long dress, particularly white dress. And that is typical, reflecting the Islamic influence along the coast. And that is natural because long time ago, Tanzania people used to trade with Arab countries. And if you move now to the northern part, where we have Kenya and Tanzania bordering each other, and we share similar traditions, especially focusing on Maasai people. These are nomads. So they don't have a one permanent place. They keep on moving from Tanzania, Kenya, and the like. And they are particularly found in the northern part. And they keep huge number of cattle. They have their own culture, which keeps on people coming and admiring those culture. If you move to the western side of Tanzania, where we have border, we share border with Burundi and Rwanda, those places are famous for the chimpanzee. And we can mention one famous name, Jane Goodall. She did her research in that particular place for more than 3 centuries. And she came up with a conclusion that chimpanzees, we really share 99% genetic makeup with them. So that place attract people to learn about the chimpanzee, their life pattern, and see the similarities with the human species. If you move to the central part of Tanzania, we have our capital city, Dodoma, which is a semi-desert, famous for wine. So wine tourism also is coming up in that particular place. Without forgetting mentioning the commercial city, Dar es Salaam is along the coast. It's famous because it's buzzing with a business from all over the world. Now, given the resources that we have in Tanzania, can we compare with Korea in natural and cultural resources? Let's see. This is a map of Korea. And if you pay attention on the map and the attractions that have been included in the map, generally we can say Korean is rich in cultural resources. Their culture, like the dress, the hanbok, which is famous, which is selling Korea outside. Not only that, modern life, capturing the Hallyu effect, the K-pop, the K-food, and other K aspects. It does sell Korea, but can we have comparison between these two countries? Well, these two countries, they cannot compete with each other. Why? Because they have different resources. If we focus on natural resources, Tanzania, we have wildlife, but Korea, they have landscape. Because more than 70% of Korea is mountainous. So they can use that resource for tourism, and definitely they are using that resource. Cultural-wise, the cultures are different. So there are similar things, but yet they are different. Now, trying to focus more on these two countries, Tanzania and South Korea. Nowadays, K-culture, K-pop, K-food is the song that Korea is singing. But Tanzania is the natural resources, like Mount Kilimanjaro is the symbol of Tanzania. And because of the natural beauty of Korea, like Pyeongchang, where the Olympic Games in 2018 was held, it's all about natural resources. But yet, these resources are quite different from Tanzania. Now, what is the message? How can we make these resources from different countries sustainable? What I'm trying to emphasize in this particular presentation is to make use of social entrepreneurship in order to make sure that these resources, they are used in a sustainable way, meaning that we should preserve the natural and cultural beauty of these resources, be it in Korea or in Tanzania or in other country that you can think of, without having social entrepreneurship, meaning businesses that are not only focusing on profit, but they are also focusing on how to add value to the society in terms of culture, meaning we should improve, preserve the culture. We should improve, enhance the social relationship. We should improve the value of the environment. Why? Because tourism tends to erode some of these resources. But these are social entrepreneurs, people who are eager to preserve, to maintain the resources. They should play their part in order to maintain and improve the tourism competitiveness in different countries. I've been mentioning sustainable tourism. Simply, I can say sustainable tourism is that form of tourism that improve the economic status, the social status, the cultural status, and the environmental status of the destination. So I will take you through some of these pictures to indicate what exactly we mean by sustainable tourism in the different aspects. In the first picture, where we see a typical traditional African lady dressed and using African attire, interacting with a tourist. Now, I might pose a question. Do you think it's sustainable? Does it preserve the culture? I can say yes. Why? Because the tourist, who is a foreigner, not an African, she is interacting with a native African. And it seems the way they're interacting is some more of a peaceful kind of. They're trying to share and appreciate the culture of each other. So that form of tourism, we can say it is sustainable because it is gearing towards maintaining peaceful relationship to make sure that the visitor and the locals, they have a peaceful relationship through sharing the culture and also through the interaction. We have the second picture where it's taken by, I believe, by a tourist. And the picture shows an old lady washing clothes in a river, typical of an African setting, rural setting. And there are few kids taking bath. Now, question, is this picture showing a sustainable kind of interaction? If we could have a live audience, then we could have a debate, because in certain aspect, one might conclude that this is not sustainable form of tourism. Why? Because the tourists, it might appear that they are gazing in, they are zooming into the backyard of the locals. Things which are not supposed to be seen by the tourists are being seen and taken as an evidence to portray the local culture. So this might indicate a tourism which is not sustainable. But to others, they might say, oh, this is sustainable because it shows the actual authentic life of the locals. So here we might have a debate, but given the fact that we don't have a live audience, then the debate is up to you and me to conclude. Then we have the third picture showing a beach with so many people. Is it sustainable? This is obvious. It's not sustainable. Why? Because we have a certain place accommodating huge number of people at one time, which might pose an environmental problem. In which aspects? Given the fact that we have so many people, they might throw trash haphazardly in the place. They might consume the beach resources to a large extent, which might not be sustainable. Things like erosion and other things. When we say sustainable tourism, in a way, we indicate that the form of tourism should not be a mass tourism. It should have a few number of people who can be accommodated in that particular time. So for this picture, the form of tourism is not sustainable. We need to reduce the number of visitors in this particular place. And that comes at the point of having social entrepreneurs who can design alternative form of tourism product to take the huge number of visitors in this particular place to an alternative place in order to reduce the number of visitors in this particular shore or seaside. And then we have the last picture in this slide showing typical East African rural community in their day-to-day life. And this picture was taken by a tourist And it really shows authentic kind of experience because it shows the day-to-day life of a typical African community. So I can say sustainable. Why? Because it shows authentic kind of life experience, and also because we don't see a tourist in this picture. It shows that most likely there are few number of visitors in this particular place, which is really sustainable in a way. Now, to conclude for this particular slide, when we develop tourism in any place, in anyhow, we need to make sure that the form of tourism is sustainable. And that brings us to the concept of social value. When we develop tourism, we need to ask ourselves, are we contributing to the social aspect of the place in a positive way? If not, then we need to think twice in order to make sure that we really bring social value to the destination and not degrading the social aspect of that particular destination. Now, focusing or zooming in the case of social entrepreneur or entrepreneurship. I've been mentioning social entrepreneur and social entrepreneurship. Now, what exactly we mean by social entrepreneurship? Social entrepreneurship, in simple language, is a form of business whereby the orientation of that particular business, it focuses on social mission. Not only focusing on profit, but also focusing on adding social value to the community. And by social value, we should reflect on the society with respect to culture and also to the environment. And this relates with the concept of total wealth. When we develop businesses, basically we want to create wealth. But in order for the business to really reflect the concept of social entrepreneurship, the value should not only reflect profit, but it should reflect societal value. So when we develop business, in tourism or in any other business, we should reflect or we should use the concept of social entrepreneurship. And those people who use this concept of social entrepreneurship in developing business, these are the ones whom we call social entrepreneurs. Now, reflecting or relating with tourism, I had the opportunity to undertake research comparing tourism in South Korea and tourism in Tanzania. So I'll try to focus on these two countries with respect to social entrepreneurship, particularly in tourism. Starting with South Korea, they have this famous concept of tudure, which can be translated as tourism that is done by community in a sense of collectiveness. And in Korea, basically, by tudure, it means that people, the locals, they come together, they produce or they develop tourism product. But when they develop tourism product in a joint manner, more than 3 persons making a business, they are not supposed to focus on profit only, but they should focus also on adding social value, like preserving culture through telling stories to the tourists, reflecting the local culture, developing products that use local resources like fruits produced in the locality, like porcelains reflecting the local culture. So really this concept of tudure that is being promoted by the Korean Tourism Organization, it reflects the concept of social entrepreneurship in the context of tourism. Now, going back to Tanzania, where I'm coming from, community is well knitted. Why? Because in a rural setting of Tanzania, like any other typical African country, people still live in a communal kind of, whereby one's problem is shared by the society. So community tourism in Tanzania also is prevalent, especially in the rural setting. But the form of community-based tourism that is promoted and done in Tanzania is a bit different from the way Koreans do, especially in the Tudure. Why? Because in Tanzania, given the fact that society is still living in communal kind of, the community-based tourism is more of collective, not only 3 or 4 persons, but rather more people like 20, 30, meaning the whole villagers who are interested in developing tourism or participating in tourism, they do participate. And their main focus compared to the Korean counterpart is not on profit per se, but rather preserving the culture and environment. Now, to wind up, I should conclude this point, and this should be the take-home message for you and me. When we develop tourism in any country, we should try to include the concept of social entrepreneurship, so that when we develop tourism, we should not focus only on profit, on monetary value, but rather we should focus also on the social value, environmental value, so that when the tourism is developed, generally it becomes sustainable to reflect the Sustainable Development Goals of the UNWTO. I think I have enjoyed the session, and I've left you with so many questions and also food for thought, which is good because it will tell